Hi, and welcome to the Remember the Future podcast. My name is Anna, and today I am going to talk to Amanda Alcodia. She is a businesswoman, a philanthropist, a wife, a mother to 3 beautiful boys, and a wonderful friend. We are going to talk about the book The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. And this book is not just any book. It contains codes which enable you to harmonize your relationship between the masculine and the feminine. For the sake of simplicity, we are going to talk about feminine energy as women and masculine energy as men. But this is not to mean that women only have feminine energy or that your energy is linked to your gender. That's not the case. Everybody has feminine and masculine energy within themselves and can express them however they like. These teachings simply help to harmonize the relationship and understand the different aspects of energy that are present within masculine and feminine energy. So we hope that this conversation will inspire you as much as it inspired us. And enjoy. Hi, Amanda. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. I'm doing great.
How was it for you to read the book? What was your experience?
Actually, it was quite interesting. So I initially got the book from a friend of ours who kind of passively said, you might want to read this when you have an opportunity. And I keep hearing about it, and it's really interesting, like how it kind of comes in to your awareness more and more. And initially, my expectation was about how it's maybe how relationships work and what's how men think and how women think, and just kind of very much just simply that. But I didn't realize how much in depth it actually would really change someone's life. So I thought it was so amazing that the way that the book was a story and yet it still teaches you. And I love books like that. And so I was just, I will say it definitely life changing. To say the least.
Yeah, I also really appreciate it's a very feminine way of teaching through story. So I found it really nice that she talks to women in a way that women really understand. I really like that about the book too. Yeah, for me it was also very transformative. Really transformative. To realize how many stories that we tell each other amongst women about men. I wasn't even aware how many stories I was holding and thinking they were true, and they were not true at all and making my life much worse. So it's been such a transformative experience to read it. And then also I feel like after reading it, I read it very quickly because I was so hungry for this knowledge. I feel like I've been looking for this for years, I've been always like, I don't understand, man. What do they want? Why do they act like this? I don't get them. I don't know what to do with them. And so finding it was like, oh my God, this is the answer, finally. And it's such an interesting way also now to integrate it into life, because reading it is one thing. But I find then you find all the ways in which you misunderstood them, and that for me, it's not very comfortable. It's quite painful to see all the missteps I took, but then just feel it and let it be. I cried a lot, but to just let it out, is incredible. So I would like to know what it was like for you. Was it also like it felt like really a bodily transformation? Like my body was adapting to a new way of being.
Yeah, it's funny because I will say the way that the book had really changed my life. So okay, I'm gonna take it back a little bit. So I know we're doing this call a little bit sooner than than we anticipated, and I didn't anticipate anything really. After reading the book and just living it for however many days, maybe 2 weeks, my relationship with Chris has changed drastically. I mean, it's always been good, and we always kind of like touch base here and there. And then sometimes we have our little like things back and forth. But now that like I'm embodying the book, it was like, honey, I want to send you on a trip. Just Valentine's, very romantic getaway. Pack your things. Don't worry about anything. And I'm in the middle of a move. Don't worry about anything. We're gonna pause stuff, or I'll figure it out, and then just pack your stuff and go. Come over, and here's what we're gonna do, and here's the address. It's gonna be a surprise. You're just gonna know very little, and it's amazing because I mean these are the things that we want, but we don't ask for. You know what I mean? And then it's just this romantic getaway that we're going to do in a very short period of time. And he's like, I want to love you. I want to honor you. And it's amazing. So I appreciate you. I really do to have this call sooner. But the way that the book like really comes together, the experience I've had, I was just like, I read the first part and then I was like, yeah, I understand. And then, and I hate to say it this way, but because I was one of the other girls previously before reading the book, she said everything I had already thought, right? Like, oh, I don't know, this is gonna work. This isn't, whatever. Men are always like this. This is this. And so she would say the little voices that are already in my head, some, not all, that are already in my head, in from one person or the other, And then even the oh, I don't want to spoil the book, but even the 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 best friend going through her situation also made me think, oh, that's what I'm thinking. Those are all the different stuff. It is so well done, so beautiful. And I agree. When I started the book, so I finished, and I think in Audible or on the app actually, I listened to it on the app. It was about 10 hours long, and I was like, oh, this is gonna take me maybe a week or two. I remember listening to the first 8 hours for like 10 hours. I had to pause and then I cried and then I replayed it again and then I had to rewind and then hear it again. And so I'm re-listening to it and it was really nice because I was working on the move and packing stuff up. And so I was aware of all the different things that are happening, but it was so good. It was so delicious. And I was like, okay, I want to share this to every woman possible. I don't know who needs this, but I want to share it to everybody and everyone I love. And this is why I shared it with you. I mean, I will say I haven't shared it with everyone I love just yet, but oh my gosh, it was so wonderful, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Oh,
It really
so
was.
amazing.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way. And you know what I found? On the website, she has like a bundle on like how to do a book club for this book. So now I really want to start a book club and invite every woman I know, and then all the women who are ready to receive will come, and we can just meet as a group and do like a little like read a chapter and then share about our experience, and then everybody can go on the journey together. I think it will be amazing.
It would be incredible. As the book, like and I'm curious for you too, and because I know you're asking me questions, but I'm curious for you, which part of the book do you think made the most impact?
I think first the idea of frog farming, the idea that a woman can turn a man into a frog,
Yeah,
and realizing that I did that all the time.
I do too.
And I was trying so hard to make it good. And it didn't work at all. And I always wondered why. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out because I was always complaining. I had never learned not to complain. And that was so, like, I wasn't even aware that I complained all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And then to see like that, and then on the flip side, the thing that I find most powerful, like as a positive practice now, is listening. We have a new roommate here in the Pearl, where I have my atelier. And when we did like a welcome dinner, and I listened to him and to David, and they were just talking, and I didn't say much. I was just listening to them,
Yeah.
and they are geniuses. They are geniuses. And I was like, wow, they know so much, you know? And it was really interesting because that's also something that that was also very life changing to learn that men really need to talk a long time to get into depth.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that. And now I let them talk and I'm amazed. I'm like, wow. And what about you? What was the most transformative part for you?
Um, I think, oh, there's so many. I would separate parts, right? So part of the email, I'm gonna say that before the email, and then there's after the email. Um, Before the email was how we self-criticize and we think we're not worthy, and then we tell them, and then they just feel defeated that they can't do that. They can't help. And so I read somewhere, um, I forgot where I read this from or who had mentioned this, but I thought it was interesting that a man will give up being with a woman if he cannot provide for her. Even if like they really love each other, if he can't give her, if he doesn't believe that he can give her everything, then he doesn't want to do it because he feels like he's going to lose all the time. And I was
Mhm.
like, what? And so a lot of the times, like for at least with Chris, I noticed, okay, I let him win, and then but then I would say, oh, but we need to do this, and do this. But I'm going into like, for instance, the move, right? Because he chose the place, he decided where, he helped figure things out. But I didn't. But then I already had a complaint about the place, and I didn't let
Mm.
him feel into all the wonderful things. Oh, there's a gym here. Oh, there's a wonderful pool. Oh, there's more than two pools or more than one pool. There's two total. There's just so many things. Oh, the balcony is wonderful. I love my view. Like, I didn't get a chance to do all of that. I was already saying, oh, but there's this and there's this wrong and there's this wrong. And he just was like, I want to celebrate that. And so he had said something to me. I think this was before the book. He would say something like, "Honey, I want you to know when I come back with meat, like if I'm going hunting and I come back to our family, to our tribe with meat, I want to rejoice that we bought meat because it was very hard to find this, and I want that." And for him to tell me that was amazing because in the beginning I'd be like, "Oh, you just got like hypothetical if it was the meat, right?" I would say, "Oh, whatever, it's just one leg." Oh, it's not the whole thing. Like I would have something to complain about. But then I would realize, oh, I'm not being the kind of woman that he deserves. And then he thinks he's not being the kind of man that I deserve. It's such an interesting balance, right?
Mhm, mhm.
It's so good.
Yeah, yeah, I really feel that. I also like. I find it very difficult to appreciate men properly. I feel like I really need to like practice. So now I'm practicing with every man I see. I'm like, how can I appreciate you? But it's like I don't know. It feels it feels difficult to me sometimes. You know, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe just because of habit, or maybe because when you are talking, I see like what Alison Armstrong says in interviews is like, so what women do to men, they do to women and they do to themselves. So if we cannot appreciate them, then we first have to learn to appreciate ourselves better, probably. And like celebrate if we hunted and we only got a leg. That's good. We hunted for like, and we got it, you know? But instead, you go to like, but I want to hunt a whole deer. Why didn't I get a whole deer? You know?
Yes.
Instead of like, yeah, celebrating the small things. Mm. Yeah, I feel like the generally the power of celebration is something that's not really a big part of society, right? It's always the next goal.
And actually, as you say that, it made me reflect on how I talked to Elijah. And Elijah's 12 years old, just about 2 weeks ago. And I'm realizing his self-talk is horrible. And then
Mm.
after reading the book, oh my gosh, I realized where it's coming from. His self-talk is because I talk to myself that way. Like, oh, I could do better. Oh, this is not good enough. I'll pause or whatever it is. Or sometimes I'm like, come on, Elijah, you should know better than that. And he's just defeated after he feels so good and he finished like sweeping the whole house. And I'm like, here, you missed this spot. And I'm like, oh, I'm not celebrating with him, you know? And oh my God, I started crying so much. I started crying so much. And I had to go to him and I apologized. I said, oh, mommy did it wrong. I'm so sorry. Because it doesn't apply to just relationships, but it applies to like even my brother, my dad, like all these men in my life. What?
Mhm.
What? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
that's really true. It's so funny because I remember like I was in a relationship where I felt like, why is he like not powerful, you know? Because I didn't let him and I didn't empower him, you know? But it's so interesting because I was like, he should be more powerful, he should be stronger, he should be you know? That was what my head was saying. And now I'm like, well, maybe he would have been if I would have praised him, you know? And that's very interesting because like I have I had maybe I still have thoughts like that about men a lot, that they should
Yeah.
be stronger. And it's like it's actually not about them. It's like I could make them stronger, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not sure if it's in the book, but the I remember Eleanor Roosevelt said, um, I think said to I was talking to um oh my God, I forgot his name, but he was and it was Eleanor Roosevelt was talking to her husband and said, oh hey look, you know, that's the guy that you used to date, and aren't you glad you stick with me? And now that I'm president, and she looked at him and she said, if I married him, he would be president. And he was like, oh, right? And it was not about who he was. It was about who she empowered him to be. And I was just like, oh, now it makes sense. Now it makes so much more sense, right? Because she really took him and he went from disability and then through the whole depression, the Great Depression, all these different things that were happening in his presidential career. But really, she empowered him. She's like the quiet one, right? And it's so interesting how that whole process works, and it just made me realize so many different things. It actually, sorry, on another, I'm gonna skip. I want to move to a thought that I had earlier that I actually was telling Chris. I said, you know, I was reflecting on Asian cultures, how we're the tiger mom. Are you familiar with that phrase, tiger mom?
No. What does it
No? Are
mean?
the tiger parents? Okay. So a tiger mom is very strict and they tell their child everything that they're going to do for years to come until at some point where they can actually trust them and then they let them do whatever it is. A lot of that, though, is a lot of criticism. A lot of criticism where you compare your siblings or they do something good and they're like, good, why isn't it an A plus? Why is it only an A? Why is it an A minus? You should have a perfect score. They don't appreciate all the little things. And so like Asian families particularly, um, even if you're good or just a smiley face, it's not good enough. It needs to be perfect every time. So that's why art is not very welcome in the Asian communities because they want something to be measured, right? And so what's easily measured? It's usually math, science, not so much the English writing or the poetry or any of that other stuff. And I thought it was interesting because that in within the culture already says a lot about how men are being raised and how women are being raised,
Mhm.
right? And so for a while I was like, I'm a tiger mom. I'm gonna teach Elijah how to be the best child, and he's gonna learn guitar by age 4. He's going to learn 3 instruments by age 11. He's going to do all of these things. He's going to be able to read by age 3, like so many different stuff, and just compile it. And now that I'm seeing that, now that he's age 12, I think a lot of it was too much. And I wasn't
Mhm.
appreciating, but I was demanding more and demanding more. And then I think about it like, oh my gosh, if I didn't catch this sooner, right? Maybe there's partly like a little cultural thing. What do you think about in terms of like the European culture? I know you know.
That's very interesting because after school I was doing about until year at an art school and I was giving tutoring to like the children of a Chinese family because one of the children went to the kindergarten of the art project and so yeah I needed to earn some money on the side so I helped him like they had a very small one that was like 5. I helped him learning to read in kindergarten and I helped the one who was in second or third grade to learn German better because they came here, they came to Germany not being able to speak German. So he had to kind of learn as he went to school, which is like not easy, yeah. And when I was there, I kind of got an insight into their life and like the time with me was like in between flute lessons and piano lessons and then sports and this and that. And I was like, oh my God, I already felt stressed hearing about his schedule and it wasn't mine, you know? So what I did, like intuitively, I was like going very easy on him, you know, and I was giving him breaks and, you know, just giving him like the time where we should learn together. We did learn stuff, but we went very slow and like more like of a rest period for him in his very stressful day because I was having like empathy for him because it was like if my life would be that stressful, I would die. Like I couldn't handle it. So that's really interesting. Yeah, but it makes sense. Like I feel like now that you tell me the story, I can feel it in the vibe of the culture, you know? It's perfection and like the cleanness. You
Yes, yeah,
know?
yes. And you should. There's another book I'll recommend to you after all the other stuff. But it's interesting because the way that they describe, like, so for myself and then just kind of growing up and reflecting, I did student council. I was one of the officers. I did dance for myself, and then president of Filipino club, and I remember having at least 5 clubs that I was a part of, and I would have something every day that I would go to. And so,
Wow.
although I didn't quite have the sports back then, like even in middle school, we'd had 3 sports and music class, like all 3 and music class, and then student council. So we always had something going on. And if it conflicted, like we'd always have to work out the schedule, but there was never a dull moment. And so we would do homework probably around 7, 8 o'clock, and then we would stay up till 10 o'clock, wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then just repeat, rinse and repeat. And we would have less sleep than we would need for that whole time. And I think that cultural, like, this is why I love the Queen's Code, is because it doesn't, now that I'm thinking about it retrospectively, this is why a lot of those marriages don't work. because culturally they assume that it's okay, right? Like to treat a person like that. And you learn that as a little kid, you know? Like why should I praise you for cleaning your room? You should be doing that already.
Yes, why is it dirty in the first place?
Yeah, it's so
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, I really feel that that's all like the power of femininity. Like it's something I've been like studying in the past few months, and like the power of pleasure. And like if you take time to have pleasurable experiences, and that might be good food, it might be time with loved ones, it might be time in nature, like whatever fills your cup, you know, then life becomes so much better. And also taking good care of your body. Like that's like a big lesson for me. Like if you treat your body like like it's basically a miracle, especially for women. Our body can create life. I mean, you did it, right? It's like it's a fucking miracle. And like how how could we think not to like take good care of it and like treat it lovingly, you know? We get taught to be like, oh, there's something here and this. Oh, my nose is too big. And what about this? Oh, my hair looks weird today, you know? And that's how we learn to look at ourselves. In truth, our bodies are like the most powerful thing on earth, maybe. You know, it's like incredible. Without women's bodies, there would be no humanity. We need men's bodies too. Yes, okay. Without any bodies, we would have a problem. You know, it's like it's the base of this existence, and we don't cherish it. And like when you start cherishing it, it's like a magic. Everything becomes so much more magical, right?
Does. It is, and it's so amazing. So I was saying that I find it funny because like you were saying, the doing and then the relaxing, that's again that's very much the feminine. Or if like we used yin and yang, right? It's like working too much. And it's like never sleeping and never resting. And then the resting is the feminine. And so it's trying to balance both, right? Because then especially in this day and age, like most especially the U.S. culture, it's get go 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 go, work 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 work. I mean, I think there are more holidays in other places, but the U.S. is like oh it's this holiday, you still work on that day. It doesn't matter, you work on that day, right? And then we have very little breaks to appreciate the body. And I think again, this is back to the feminine culture, right? How we could grasp the femininity. And so it's this pendulum going back and forth. That's
Mhm.
so good. I love the way you mentioned
Yeah, I really love the whole idea of masculine and feminine energy because for me, like it feels like inside of me there's the masculine and the feminine. And so when I was like after my relation, like I had a romantic relationship for a long time, and after it ended, I was reflecting back on it and trying to learn from it. And I realized that the way he treated me was the way my masculine treated my feminine inside of me. So when I was like, oh, he doesn't listen, it was like, well, my masculine didn't listen to my feminine, you know? The doing part of me didn't listen to the being part of me. I was doing in service of my being. I was just doing to reach some goal that my doing thought was useful, you know? But it wasn't really in contact with the feminine part of me. So, like, I feel like this, yeah, what do you think about this? What comes up for
that.
you?
That's so good. No, I didn't put those connections together yet. But you're right. What is the masculine part? Wow. Sorry, I'm so in awe. That is so well said. I'm going to write that down. I want to tell Chris. Oh, I can just show him the recording.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes
You
so
know,
much
much
sense.
more empowering idea to think about it, because before I was like, I cannot change his behavior. I was like, what should I do? I cannot change it. I tried to tell him my needs. I wasn't really able to do it in a proper way. And now in the book, you learn how to do that. And I was like, oh my God, I did it wrong. But then it's like, okay, but how did it wrong inside of me? Like, how can my masculine and my feminine inside of me connect and communicate? Because for a long time, they really couldn't. They were like two different people, not really talking to each other.
I think it's definitely the balance. It's funny because when this might be a little personal, but it'll be fine. When Chris and I would argue, and he's too passive, I get louder and I'm more aggressive. And then if he's too loud and aggressive, there's the balance. At some point, like we're both not really happy, and now he gets too loud, or more angry, or more upsetting, then I go right back down. And it's just like seesaw. And I think overall, and he says all the time, he's like, just stay in your feminine. And so if I tell him I don't like it and I'm about to cry, he'll fix it all the time. And so then it becomes this beautiful balance, because if I'm like, oh, I don't like this is really sad, and he goes, oh no, and he'll push up and he says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. And then this like his masculine comes in and I get to just relax. And so we have different issues in different situations where we both could do that. And so whenever he's upset with something, like let's say he's like, oh, this person's not doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, they're not paying attention, they're not listening. I'm like, oh, let me come in and I'll bring my feminine. And so he'll step down, and then I'll be able to rise up and say, okay, hey, what's going on here? Why wasn't this sent out properly? What was going on? And then it turns out they actually have a valid excuse, or maybe they don't have a valid excuse. And then we talk about it and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do next. And that way it's not like, they're not listening, I'm going to fire them. Oh man.
That's really beautiful, and it's very interesting because recently I've been coming across this quadrant model of feminine and masculine energy. It's like in the middle, like it's exactly how you were using your hands. Like in the middle, it's like the golden middle. So it's like the feminine in their power, the masculine in the power, and they can like interact and empower each other. And then there are the different quadrants. So the overpowering feminine and the underpowered masculine and the underpowered feminine and the overpowered masculine. So the ones next to each other, they attract each other. So like if you have a man who's like very not in his power, he would attract a woman that tends to be like overpowering men.
Yes.
And there we come back to the book, right? And then so these two attract each other and these two attract each other. And we have all four in us. So it makes sense that you go back and forth. And like when I first came across that model, I was like trying to find out where I tend to go in my relationships.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's all of them. Sometimes I'm overpowering, sometimes I'm very powerless, because it's like it's all there, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, so do you remember the model? And you could show it up on the podcast. Do you remember the model that Chris had mentioned about the different archetypes?
Mm.
And then it's overheated and overpowered. And so, for instance, I think like the solar plex is all about me as overheated, right? Like I think it was the tyrant, and then versus the slave on the solar plex again is like, whatever, I don't care anymore, just do whatever you want, right? There's those different balances. So if you think of it, going back to his the model that he, I wouldn't say it's necessarily just his model, but he pieced together different other people's model and then made a different, unique way of putting it. Each one is slightly different at different times. And then so even for the sacral, like the root chakra, depending on how you put it, would be the warrior who's ready to fight and is really angry versus the more sensitive, gentle one who's a little bit like let's soften. I think it just depends on the situation. So for business, what typically works seems seems like it's the masculine go-getter, get all of it done, bulldoze through everything, but they don't get so far. They push, and yes, they could do the push fast. But what's interesting is if you get two, you push steady. Oh, sorry, wait, no. If you push steady, right, you could actually go faster, longer, because you have the balance and you just know which one to use. Versus the more sensitive might not push very much, wait, might not push very much, wait, right? And it's balanced. And each week, Chris and I decided, and this is a really good conversation to have in your next relationship, to decide who has the final say for what thing.
Hmm.
And we say, okay, for health, in terms of insurance and like getting all of that, I have that. But Chris has the data and the science and what vitamins, how many vitamins, and all the different things, and what's recommended. And we also use intuition. I will say it's a back and forth, but he has the final say. And then for moving or making sure that the house is properly done and doing that, that's all Chris. I don't even want that. I don't want to touch that. I don't even want to touch the trash. But for me, I enjoy the cooking, I enjoy the creating, and he'll help with the destruction and getting the stuff cleaned up. So we have a good balance, and it's deciding who wants what. So if I want to cook today, I get to cook today. But if I don't want to cook, sorry, we're not eating or we're going out, right? And it's determining what's what because some days we can't choose. And you know those couples that when you go, oh, what do you want to eat? I don't know, what do you want to eat? Well, we pick, so we create less disagreements and less indecisiveness. You know, oh, you chose last. Oh, okay, then I'll choose this time. And then sure enough,
Mhm.
like he'll say, okay, we'll have beans. And I'm like, never mind, I'll choose rice. And so I'll switch it. And he's like, oh, okay, then we could do that. You know, but it's never the final say. It's whatever the current moment has for that moment, you know, for the situation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's a smart rule. Yeah, what came up for me was like when you were saying about like in business that the masculine is always pushing forward, but if you have the balance, I think one of the big things that we usually don't think about is like the feminine also has like a better vision, like quite biologically, literally, because our awareness works like we see more stuff, which is so interesting because I was always so confused. Like I was living with David and like he was like, where's this something? Like where's the salt? And it's standing right in front of him at the table and he couldn't see it. And I was like, can he really not see it? That's really unrealistic, right? Really? But he cannot. And I feel it's not only in the physical sense, but also in like a vision sense
Yeah.
of like what kind of future do we want to create? You know, I feel like the feminine holds the vision of where do we want to go. And I feel if the relationship between the feminine and the masculine is healthy, then the masculine will be interested to know where she wants to go so he can go and get her there. And
Yeah.
that's also something that I really love about your relationship with Chris that you once told me like you had some dream and he's like, hey, how can we make it happen? And I
Yeah.
think that's like beautiful. It's like wonderful. Like who wouldn't want that? Uh,
Well,
yeah, but I think if business, like if the feminine is there, then there's also more intuition. And then like you don't have to push like the straight way to the thing, but maybe there's something where you can move a smarter way,
yes.
you know?
The shortcut. Yeah. We're on the same wavelength. I was thinking that too. It's like this is where we want to go, and this is the fastest way, and he'll get us there. instead of me going here. And it'll take time, but he'll just go, "Whoop." Even if it looks longer, it's still the faster way.
Hmm.
It depends. So I will say that the vision part is slightly, can I add something to, or food for thought? Yeah, for the
Yes,
vision.
yes, please.
Usually we have the same vision, the same thought or idea that we want to go to. We just go to it in different ways. And I like to find the path of least resistance. And
Hmm.
so for him, he just likes to go drill, 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 and then he's there. I like to see where, okay, let's go this way. Oh, that's faster this way. That's faster this way. But then what looks like, for at least for me, will go fast. It'll seem faster. It just looks longer because you don't see anticipate it. Usually when Chris and I work on business or work on different ideas, I'll take a look at a contract and I'll say, here's all the negative possibilities. Here's what everything can go wrong. And he'll understand that I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm just trying to close all the little holes to make sure it's bulletproof, right?
Hmm.
There's one contract. I was just like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. It doesn't make sense. I'm going to lose money. I'm going to lose time. It's not, it doesn't make sense. And he said, no, let's just use intuition. Like, let's be guided for that. And so we didn't work on different things, but now that I'm looking at it retrospectively, there was a reason why we met this person and we talked to them and helped them and do all these different things. But you won't know that until you look at the big picture, right? Because then going through it seems so crazy. But I at least anticipated all the potential bad, I would say bad possibilities, negative possibilities. So that way we can at least cover them up. And that's what you and I do, right? And not that we want to hurt someone. And I love the way Alison Armstrong says, we have to tell each other where the bad berries are. You need the full report. So you know
Hmm.
the one next to it is good. That way you don't have to go too far, but the one with the bear is not good.
I have one more question. Because you have sons, right? Like, how did the book change your relationship to your sons?
I think I started praising more and being more in the moment. I think back then I was very much like, okay, we got to wake up, we have to have breakfast, we have to get dressed, we go out to the park, you need to run, and I just watch. And sometimes I play. I'll say sometimes I play. But now I'm noticing all the little things I can praise, and you know, it makes sense. It just solidifies more about what we know, like about so some of the books and some of the teachings I love are like Love and Logic, um, the whole brain child. And I will say, even if you don't plan on having kids, I still recommend to read both of those books because they're able to help you communicate. And so initially, when I started, I'm sorry, I'm going to take a side note to this. Initially, when I started my career, I said I need to know everything it is about communication. So I did all the communication stuff as much as I could find, and then psychology stuff. And then I'm like, oh wait, I need to learn about relationships. And then I did all the relationships, or most of it. And then there's always something new. And after a while, I started learning about kids and then how to talk to them. And then when you learn, like, shoot, I should have done the kids first communication and then it all builds on each other. I feel like I'm going backwards. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I would have learned
Hmm.
this so I would have known how to speak to them more effectively and do all this stuff. This book alone, just the Queen's Code, already tells me what kind of woman I want for my son. And so that way I can at least nudge them. Oh, I don't know about that. So I don't want to even release this, but probably by then it'll be fine. So I'm gonna say it. My brother was gonna propose to his girlfriend, and they had a mix up with the reservations or whatever. So he's still gonna do it. But it started to make me think, like, how do you know? And and my sister just went through a divorce, and they've been together for over 10 years. And And I've had my share of divorces and separations, and my boys. And I've always wondered, how do you know, or is it just chance? I always said, it's just chance, whatever it might be. It's just chance, because people change. And now I think the Queen's Code is a secret formula. This whole time, this whole time, I always thought, oh no, I'm afraid that if I grow this way, Chris is not going to love me anymore, and then we're going to separate and break apart, right? So
Mm.
how is it even possible that our values, because our values change, right? Our values may change. Like I might prioritize the children right now, and he might not. And he prioritize work, and then we're clashing, and we're just not doing well. So how do we do that? And I realize I have a couple. Actually, very blessed to have a couple of friends who are really good in their relationship, and I always wonder why. And I realize the way she talks to him. Don't get me wrong, the way he talks to her is also very effective. It plays an important role, and he's not crazy. But the way she constantly always encourages him, I'm just like, oh my God, she's the queen. This is why the one area in her life never messes up, never, is finance and relationship. Never. It's just, oh, how can I spend more effectively? Or what else can I buy? That's the way she thinks. And I'm like, what? And she's gonna see this one day. Her name's Stephanie, by the way. You need to meet her. She's incredible. And she's like, yeah, I know, I haven't. And she usually, when she calls me, she'll ask for advice for her husband. Like, oh, what is this like? What is this like? And she'll call me again. And even if I'm repeating it, she's like, oh, I have a new thought. Does this change? And I'm like, no, it doesn't change anything. Oh, how about this one? Oh, yes, that changes something. Don't do this, do this, do this, do this. She's like, well, okay, got it. But she's constantly never says anything bad about him. I think the worst might be like when they tease each other about, I don't know, something silly. Like I can't even think about anything that they put each other down for. But sarcasm is not even a thing, unless they open up to it. Like Chris will always make fun of me for my height. And he's I know he's like 6'1" and I'm 5'1", so there's a pretty big gap. And so, but I allow it. I appreciate it. I like it. But if there's something I'm like, no, I don't like that, you make fun of that. And so he says, oh honey, no, I'm sorry, and he stops and he never does it again. But it's a balance. So anyways, oh okay, no, this is going full circle. So going back to your question with the kids, it's being able to help find them a really good wife and showing them what a really good wife looks like. I told Elijah, I literally had this conversation about a couple of days ago, and I said, Elijah, I'm sorry. Mommy was doing it wrong about relationships the whole time. We're going to press the reset button. And this is how you're supposed to find. This is the type of woman that you should have. And he's like, what, Mom? And to him, logically, he doesn't care. He doesn't know. But I know subliminally it's going to change in him. Because I heal myself, he heals himself. And the little ones will also see it too. The younger too. Yes, sorry, long-winded question, and then I had like thoughts.
But that's good. I appreciate it. I like to hear your thoughts. And that's really wonderful. I'm really curious to see over the past, like over the next few months and years, how your children will develop and if you will see a change, and like how quickly they will like grow, in that sense. That's really interesting. And yeah, what your thoughts sparked in me is like there's this idea that we learn in some way. I also really felt like that. I really believe that if we as women go our way and if we follow where we are led, that the men might not follow us. And that we have to stay in one place because that's safer, because then they can handle it and they can stay with us and it will be fine. And I think it's actually the exact opposite. That's true. And it's so interesting. And also, like, going back to the quote about the president that you said before, with the woman who's like, yeah, if I would have been his wife, he would be president.
Yeah.
I really love that. And there's also this other quote, like, behind every successful man, there's a powerful woman.
Yeah.
And I've heard that years ago, and I was like, I don't know, but why isn't she then successful herself? You know? And it's so ingrained in our thought that, like, to have a successful husband is not like, you're not powerful if you have a successful husband and make him successful. You're powerful if you make yourself successful, right? And it's so interesting because when I really feel into it, I don't really want to be successful. I just want to have a good time, you know?
Yeah.
I would appreciate more free time to sit in the forest. I would love that instead of working more, you know, and if there would be someone willing to work for, like, for me, like as a couple, it would be amazing, you know? So it's really interesting that, like, this image of what power is, right?
I think it's really funny because it's not until we realize what a real man is like, then they start to come. Do you know what I mean? Because a
Hmm.
man really wants a team. And not like I'm going to, oh, you stay at home and you do this. Not necessarily, but they want a team to like cultivate their mind physically, spiritually, emotionally. Like there's so many opportunities to help, and it's not always one way, right? Um, the the one I thought at the end of the book was very interesting was the man versus the prince versus the knight. Oh my gosh, this whole time I've been dating like little princes and little knights who try to stab things and they're off and trying to do things. And I'm like, no, come home. But they weren't the king yet.
Hmm.
They just weren't. Chris off the bat already was the king. But I wasn't prepared for the king. I thought I had to be the maid to clean everything, to do all the things. So he does his work, I do my work, we do separate. He's like, no, 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 you are the queen. And he had to and remind me, like, honey, you don't have to do that. You want someone to do that? Here, I'll hire someone to do that. And it shocked me because, which is probably a little excessive, we had like 3 assistants. I didn't need 3 assistants. I didn't. But he was like, and this is physical assistance plus a nanny. And then we had oh my goodness, we had like I think 3 or 4 virtual assistants. Again, we really didn't need it because Chris could do all of it. And with AI and all the automations, like he's like, oh honey, let me just do this. And I'm like, yeah, but I want this and want that. And he goes, okay, here. And he goes, okay, now you're gonna sleep. And I'm like, no, 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 I need to organize the garage. Okay, here, we have another assistant. They're gonna come, they're gonna do all this stuff, and they're gonna get it done in 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, 2 weeks? That's it? So I had 3 assistants, got everything done in 1 week, and now I had nothing to do. And then I was looking for another problem. I was looking for another problem and another problem. I said, but we have this problem. And then we kept the assistants longer and longer until like at some point he was like, we don't need them because I want you to have you be you, and we only need one at most, you know. That's interesting. And it turned out I didn't need a nanny.
Hmm.
I just wanted to play with the kids. You know, why have a nanny when I can play with the kids and someone else can clean?
Hmm. Yeah, that's very sweet. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because, like, there's this, yeah, this wish to have a king, but then you really need to be able to receive. And like, I've never really practiced that, you know? And it's really interesting because now learning that men like to help me, that was like a real mind blow moment for me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think that they would like that. I think I would be like a burden for them if I would ask them for help. So I would always try to do everything myself. And then I apologized for some things of the past to my ex. And then he told me that he was so happy that I like accepted his help after we split up. And I was like, what? You like that? You know, it was very hard for me to accept it. But I did it because I really needed it, you know, and I was like, It's okay, you know, I can accept that." And he was like, yeah, he really appreciated that I received that. And that was really like, I was like, and now I started asking men for help, and they love it. They love it. They are so kind and so nice. And I'm just like, wow, you know, I'm like looking at all of the men I know, and I'm like, oh my God, it feels like I couldn't see them before. I literally couldn't see them. I saw like a weird version of them that wasn't real because my mind distorted the picture, you know?
Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, feel free to share it with anyone that you feel called to. And if you're interested in this topic of the queendom, as I would call it, you might also be interested in checking out my website. On there, you will find a jewelry collection that I created for this topic, a list of books that I found very inspiring, and also you will be able to contact me if you are interested in joining the book club to read the Queen's Code in a group of women together and explore how we want to embody the queendom in our lives. Yes, so see you there. I wish you all the best.